recent ones that I recorded. I don't know, there's a lot that could be said about this one. This is one of my personal favorites as far as like music goes, but about 6 months ago maybe, I had just, after like recording the first demo, my parents, like I had mentioned, about, previously, they were a bit skeptical. They didn't think what I was doing was a good thing. They didn't think it was good at all to get carried away, and they thought that I had my sights set like too far. Like I just expected to be the shoo-in to like the music business, which is not the case, for anybody, who's talented. It takes a lot of persistence and a lot of being turned down and disappointed, and a lot of having to hang in there before one can really make or catch a break. But they didn't really approve of it, as most parents don't really. I mean, it's not anything unusual, but I just felt different. I enjoy doing this. It's not like it's not like there's just this ulterior motive, like I have to just be this big star and whatnot. And they thought of course I'm in the middle of school, so they're concerned that I'm not going to pay as much attention to that. But that they said to just basically put music aside and everything, and to just stop doing what I was doing at the time, which was like recording the demo and polishing it off and taking care of all the artwork. And it that there were some times that it wasn't all that pretty, all the arguing and everything. It really put me through a lot, and I hate to have to do that. I'm normally not the most quarrelsome person, but that was that was a bit frustrating. I had to vent, at least partially, in this song about people who don't it's not that they don't approve of what I'm doing. They're just they're not real artistic people. They don't really see this as anything of value. It's a lot different than if I had people who were trained musicians, parents who had been in bands, and other family members who were interested in this as well. But so yeah, it just kind of came from that. I'd gotten into a few rather heated arguments, especially with my mom, who didn't really like the whole idea of spending time working on the demo and everything, and thinking that it's a little unusual. And then I guess the other half of the song, mostly in the second verse, I'd say, and second pre-chorus, I grew up in a household where everybody was much different than me. Everybody in my family, my brother, sister, mom, and dad, they're all these huge athletic people, these sports fanatics. My sister plays volleyball at Wake Forest. My brother, he spends a whole lot of time watching ESPN, and he played a bunch of sports back back when he was younger. My dad, he's he always keeps track of all the stats, and and they're always attending my sister's volleyball tournaments. ESPN's on constantly in the house, and my mom likes to follow that stuff too. She's really into it, and I gotta say, I mean, I like watching, games and everything, say football games, with groups of people. Teams are doing really well, but I don't get generally nearly as into it as even, some other people I know, and I'm definitely not one to keep track of all the statistics and that kind of stuff. And they just, I don't know, I've always been the real artistic kind of person. Music has always meant a lot more to me, as far as playing it and writing it and performing it and recording it, than anybody else in my family. They're the kind of people that just listen to it and that's it. They'll know bands for only one song. They they won't know much about the history, and even if they could, it wouldn't really fascinate them in any sort of way. But I was just different. I always used to joke and wonder whether or not I was adopted, or because honestly I spend all my time playing instruments, and my parents just look at it as simply me knowing how to play an instrument. They don't see any artistic side to it. Alright, he can write based on personal experiences, fascinations, feelings, and he knows how to write lyrics, he can sing, he can play a bunch of instruments, he can record and perform in front of people. They looked at it as just me playing an instrument. And I guess, yeah, it's it was kind of weird growing up in that household. You wonder where you get these abilities and everything if you're so into it and you keep doing it as much as I have, you know, throughout the years. Despite being this busy, I'm still, you know, trying to be as active as possible. But, you know, I just have that, like, artistic mind frame, you know, that nobody else in my family does, and they don't really understand it, you know, in the same way. They're too busy, you know, concentrating on anything sports related. So yeah, that's kind of like, you know, what the song is made of. Like half is just like, I guess, like, you know, like the argument, and then just like the experience of growing up in a household like this. But and as far as the music goes, this is by far like one of my favorites. This was me, like, I've always wanted to try and write a song, you know, with, like, you know, classical influences, and this is definitely a song that can you know, do that, and all in, like, you know, in a short time. I think it's like under like 4 minutes or so. But, you know, I was I remember way back when I was in, like, you know, grade school in the band, we played this one song. It was like this Brazilian, like, folk song, like, you know, peace and everything, and the melody to, like, you know, the first movement was very similar to this. That to this day is beyond me, but I don't know why that just, like, you know, came up randomly, and I like that a lot. I thought it was, you know, it's real, like, you know, creative, and it just had that, like, hook, you know. And as far as, like, you know, the constantly changing pace, I just wanted to try and use, like, you know, as many interesting chords as I can. And, you know, the chorus part, this one right here, of using that in another song, but, you know, that would have been the only good part. You know, it was a song I had once written, but I decided to just get rid of it because I didn't like it nearly as much as I like this. You know, you kind of like link that with, like, you know, certain other riffs that you think are really good, and then there, that could be how, like, you know, a top song, you know, in my opinion, comes to life and is born. But and then also, like, you know, I had written the bridge, that like real, like, you know, kind of classical type. It's like, you know, around the holidays, and of course you hear on, like, you know, commercials, you hear that, you know, all those, like, classical pieces, like, you know, one prominent one being, like, you know, Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies, and I've always liked that song. It's always been, like, real interesting to me. It's a real, like, minor song. It's real eerie and, like, you know, cryptic, if you will, but very, like, you know, cleverly written and composed. And I just wanted to, like, I thought that this song would be perfect for, in the bridge, introducing, like, one of those, like, you know, classical, like, you know, dance segments, much like what you hear in a song like that. So I always just, like, you know, I always thought it would be cool, at least in one song, to, you know, incorporate, you know, classical influences. And then sure enough, it's like, you know, it's real minor too. It's, you know, like, I've been trying to work on writing minor songs because, you know, they have a pretty strong effect. And it ends, you know, nice quickly too, so that's also always like that a lot. And plus, you know, this is like a song that's packed with creativity. In less than 4 minutes, I don't have to go over the line or anything like that, so, you know, I figure. And, like, you know, and it also, like, you know, it starts out, I think, like, you know, the song starts out with, like, the hook, the catchiest part, like, by far. Releasing that, that's, you know, something that'll immediately get people's attention, and it's always nice about the song. Normally, like, yeah, the chorus is, like, you know, the most, like, melodic part. It's got the hook. It's, you know, what leaves people wanting, you know, to listen to it again. But, you know, this one basically opens with that, so